You're saying I'm not your best friend? Why? Because I don't know anything about you? Because I never ask any questions or show any interest in you? Because I take you for granted? Because if it is, that's awfully petty of you.
Good evening, good evening, good evening, and thank you for joining me here for Conversations with Taz. You know what? Let's just jump right into it. Cops are clueless.
What do you do if somebody says they want to talk to a lawyer and you have them in handcuffs?
We allow them to call a lawyer.
Do you keep asking them questions?
Depends on the case.
Oh, I got you. Okay, tell me the case in which you would continue to ask questions of somebody in custody after they ask for a lawyer.
If we're doing an investigation, we're going to ask.
I got you. Okay. Do you know which amendment it is that allows people to demand a lawyer? Do you have any idea?
No.
Have you ever read anybody the Miranda rights?
No.
You've never read anybody their Miranda rights?
No.
Have you ever arrested anybody?
No.
Other than Ms. Berquist?
No.
She's the only person you've ever arrested?
Yes. And that was a detainment.
Right, but you also said that it was an arrest earlier, remember? Do you not remember that?
Please explain to me how firemen, paramedics, EMTs have to go through regular training, mandatory, workouts and calisthenics, be tested on a regular basis, and cops have no idea about rights afforded in amendments, what the law is, nothing. They're supposed to be the first step towards justice. Hmm. Now, yesterday we talked about the interesting launch of we all say DeSantis, but he himself says DeSantis. So, I'm all about properly pronouncing people's names. So my apologies for mispronouncing it before. But Ron DeSantis finally decided to come out after running a shadow presidential campaign for months. But he's got some other things to worry about. Let's take a look.
So I haven't talked about this bill yet, but now seems like the perfect opportunity, because once I heard that Elon Musk was going to allow DeSantis a space to announce his presidency on Twitter, I immediately Googled where we were in terms of passing spaceflight liability immunity bill. That's right, you heard me. So while DeSantis was trying to determine where the best place for him to announce his presidency would be, this came across his desk. SB 1318 that both houses passed is waiting on DeSantis' signature. So Elon Musk wasn't really playing nice. He just wanted Ron DeSantis to sign the bill that allows him and his other billionaire buddy, Jeff Bezos, to get out of paying for any deaths of the crew members who work for their companies.
Last week, Disney announced that they were canceling a planned $1 billion investment into the state of Florida to create a brand new state-of-the-art office park that would have brought in 2,000 new permanent, very well-paying jobs to the state of Florida. And of course, the reason they're canceling this project that had been planned for a very long time is all because of Ron DeSantis and his attacks on the Disney Corporation. In response to this, Ron DeSantis has publicly said he is not backing down. He doesn't care. He will suffer the slings and arrows, and he will continue to go after Disney because we got to catch that damn mouse, right? Well, his fellow Republicans are starting to get pissed off. They're starting to look at this guy and realize that not only is he losing to Goofy and Pluto, but they're starting to think that maybe he's not the brightest bulb that they've got in the chandelier. Here is what Republican senators from the state of Florida now have to say about Ron DeSantis and his little feud that has now cost the state $2,000. Here's former governor, current Senator Rick Scott. He says, "This is the biggest or second biggest employer in the state. Half the tourism that comes to our state comes to visit Disney. It's a reason people come to our state. After they come there, people move there. So I think cooler heads need to prevail. My view is we have to do everything to help our businesses grow." Our other senator from this state, Marco Rubio, as dumb as he is, actually had this to say. "I think where it gets problematic in the eyes of some people is when you start creating the idea, and I'm not saying we're there yet as a state, but the idea that somehow if you run crossways with us politically, whoever's in charge, then you may wind up in the crosshairs of the legislature for political purposes to make a statement at you. If it starts to be perceived that any corporate entity that's operating directly or indirectly in furtherance of a political agenda that the powers that be don't agree with, therefore we're going to use the power of government to target you. You get concerned. If a Democratic governor and a Democratic legislature takes over Florida, they're going to go after Chick-fil-A. It's not a bad idea. I actually kind of like that. Mostly because I also don't like Chick-fil-A and don't understand the hype around it. It's mediocre chicken nuggets. Like, okay, not that great. Either way, it pains me to say this, both these men are right. And by the way, it's not just Republicans in the state of Florida serving on the national level. There have been multiple reports out over the last couple weeks of Republicans in the Florida state legislature growing sick and tired of Ron DeSantis' obsession with taking down Disney because apparently it is preventing him, from actually being able to do their jobs. Like, they can't pass the legislation that they need to pass to appease the people back home because Ron DeSantis is so obsessed with taking down Disney. Now, what's funny about this is even long before the whole Disney thing happened, I had talked about the fact that DeSantis was taking his culture wars a little too far. Like, every time he would do something or he would see another state do something, he would then have to take his even further, just like with the Don't Say Gay legislation. We've got a pending expansion of that happening right now in the state. So he's always trying to go one step further. I've got to be the most extreme. I've got to be the biggest culture warrior. And I've compared him repeatedly to Icarus. You got your wax wings and you were flying around. You were flying high and doing great. But then you said, I can get higher than the sun. I can approach the sun. I am invincible and nothing can stop me. And his wings are melting. And he is right now crashing back down to earth. It is the story of hubris. I can do no wrong. I beat the hell out of my Democratic opponent in my re-election bid, the biggest margin we have seen in this state in decades. I am invincible. And I can get away with it. Those wings didn't take you much further, bud. A lot of us, I think, understand what's happening. I'm just a little surprised that more people didn't see it coming. As I said, I've been talking about this for over a year. I've been using that Icarus analogy. Regular viewers, you've heard me say it. You probably rolled your eyes when you heard me say it again because you've heard it so many times. Everything I have predicted with Ron DeSantis has come to fruition, folks. And things are about to get much worse for him. Even as he prepares to launch his presidential bid with poll numbers that are basically going down the toilet, he's still going to do it. He's still going to keep up his fight. And that may be the one thing. I mean, hell, we saw it last week with Donna Deegan. DeSantis might be so extreme that he finally actually starts to push Florida a little more to the left. Wishful thinking, maybe, but right now things aren't looking so good for Florida Republicans.
But guess who else is having trouble with their own constituency? You wouldn't believe it unless I showed you. So let's go. Then we'll come back and talk some more.
After Trump posted this on Instagram, his fans started to turn against him. These are just some of the comments on Trump's latest Instagram post, in which he mocked DeSantis' announcement on Twitter Spaces. But Trump supporters are genuinely turning against him, saying, "This is too childish. This is cringeworthy. And stop acting like a child. Trouble is brewing in MAGA paradise."
Yeah, see, both of them decided to girl boss too close to the sun, and it's biting them in the ass. But on top of that, you thought that the Republican Party was split before? Baby, the girls are fighting. I'm talking Sparta style fighting, okay? The DeSantis camp and the Trump camp are at each other. It's to the point where Trump is now admitting things previously that the ultra MAGA crowd were blaming Biden for. Trump is like, nope, that was me. Yep, I did that. This is what I did. Yep. And their sycophants they're fighting to the point where the truth is coming out and they don't even realize that the truth is coming out. They're exposing themselves for us. And I am here for all of it. All of it. See, if you give them enough time and space, they hate each other more than they hate the rest of us. They just try to cover it up until they can't anymore. And when they start going after each other, baby, white conservative on white conservative crime is the best reality TV entertainment that ever was. Because they start bringing receipts on each other that you didn't realize you needed. But let's get some updates on all of these trials that are going on, or at least the most notable ones. Let's go.
Okay, y'all, we have a lot of updates on some really big cases, and we're going to talk about them in this order. First, we have a couple updates in regard to Bryan Kohberger and Moscow, Idaho. Now, Bryan's parents were called to testify before a grand jury in Pennsylvania. And this was in connection to a 45-year-old woman named Dana Smithers, who is from Monroe County, Pennsylvania, the same county that Bryan Kohberger is from. Now, supposedly Bryan has a strong alibi, but it is this creator's opinion that you would not call the parents in to testify if there wasn't a reason to do that. On top of that, there's another case that he's being looked into for in Pennsylvania, but I don't have any details of that case at this time. Now, regarding the house located at 1122 King Road, which is where this horrific event occurred, according to the University of Idaho, they are still planning to demolish that house this summer. Now, there are people who are concerned about the demolition of the house before the trial in the event that jurors might want to walk through it, but according to the university, the demolishment of it is still going to go ahead as scheduled. Moving on to another case that is very near and dear to my heart, there was a big win today in the lawsuit against the Laundries. Gabby's family was in court today to talk about several things, but most importantly, the burn after reading letter that was written to Bryan. Now, the only time Roberta Laundrie has actually come out to speak and made any type of statement is in regard to this letter, trying to basically defend herself in the actions with it. Because although we've never seen the letter, supposedly it contains information about her offering to Lynn Bryan a shovel, hide a body, and bake him a cake with something inside of it to help him escape prison. All of that said, Roberta has claimed that this is some kind of funny thing that she did with her son to try to reconnect with him with a strained relationship. But now there are no more steps for them to try to withhold that letter, and the Petito Schmidt family could have that letter as soon as this evening. Now, as far as when and if the public will get to know what's in it, that's to be determined. Next up is Alec Murdaugh. He's been indicted on 22 additional charges, including federal conspiracy, money laundering, and fraud. Next, and this is very important, is Grant Solomon. Tomorrow night, May 25th, at Public Square Park in Nashville, there is going to be a candlelight vigil for him. If you don't know about this case, please look into it. The best way is to follow the link in my bio and go to my podcast and listen to the second episode. This is a case that absolutely needs more attention, and it's one of those, similar to Murdaugh, where there's a lot of money, there's a lot of power, and there's been a lot of cover-up. Next, in regard to Natalie Holloway and Joran Vandersloot, extradition is a go. Now, despite the fact that Joran's attorney had vowed to fight extradition, it appears his efforts were futile, and Joran could be here in the United States as soon as June to face charges on wire fraud and extortion. Once he does get to the U.S., he will be remanded into federal custody with Peruvian guards escorting him the entire time that he's here. Depending on how he pleads, he will then go to trial, and then once that's over, he will fly back to Peru, finish his sentence there, and then be extradited back to the U.S. for whatever sentence he'll need to serve here. The search for evidence in regard to Madeleine McCann's disappearance is entering day 2. This search comes after more evidence has been brought to light about Christian Bruckner, who is the prime suspect in this case, where more data has come out that shows that he was in the area living here at the same time. Now, while this reservoir had been searched before in previous years, they now seem to have it narrowed down to a smaller area. They aren't looking for anything body-related or remains, but it appears they are looking for things like pajamas and clothing, things that she might have been wearing. And they have reason to believe that it could be in this area. So the Portuguese police are searching along with German and British counterparts. They've brought in heavy equipment. They've brought in tents and camping equipment, and a remote control tractor, amongst a myriad of other things. And lastly, and I did make a video earlier today about this, there was an assassination attempt on President Biden. A 19-year-old man from St. Louis, Missouri flew in after planning for 6 months apparently to do this, rent a U-Haul truck and drive through barriers at the White House. And he said that he, as you can see here, he was prepared to take Biden's life and seize power. Now, apparently this person was also a person who admired Nazis and actually had a Nazi flag on him, but here's the interesting part about that. This is the white supremacist. And before anybody says anything, Clayton Bigsby did teach us that you do not have to be white to be a white supremacist. So there you go. Those are the updates for today. At this point, I'm keeping an eye on all of these cases. So if you're interested in any of them, please hit that follow button so you don't miss any of the updates. And I will be live later tonight to talk about primarily Kohberger, but all of these other things as well.
Now, real quick, before I go into another Kohberger, well, I like to just refer to him as the Idaho murder suspect update. Let me bring this information to you regarding Grant Solomon for people who may not know. This is coming from investigationdiscovery.com. What happened to Grant Solomon? Loved ones believe teen baseball star's tragic death may have been murder. Questions and controversy continue to surround a Tennessee teenager's death, which some claims was the result of murder and not an accident like authorities and his father believe. According to the Tennessean, Grant Solomon, a high school senior and star basketball player at Grace Christian Academy in Franklin, had just turned 18 when he died July 20th, 2020. An investigation determined Grant was killed after he was struck by his own car while in the parking lot of a baseball training club in Gallatin. The news reported a single person, Grant's father, former Nashville radio and television personality Aaron Solomon, witnessed the death, according to the outlet. In November 2021, protesters who insisted foul play was involved in Grant's death gathered at the state capitol in Nashville and urged the Gallatin Police Department to reinvestigate the case. The teenager's sister, Gracie Solomon, and his mother, Angela Solomon, have alleged the siblings' father, Aaron, was somehow involved in the deadly accident and claimed there are inconsistencies in the official police report the news reported. Gracie, now 16, has also claimed, let me run this back because I really need y'all to pay attention. Gracie, now 16, has also claimed she was abused by their father, Aaron. In a YouTube video posted May 2021, she called Aaron a rapist, a molester, a liar, and a killer, according to the news. Gracie also alleged her brother feared their father and his terrifying behavior, and she said she strongly believes Aaron Solomon killed Grant. Aaron Solomon has not been charged in connection with his son's death or alleged abuse of his daughter, and he adamantly denies any wrongdoing. In a lawsuit filed in March 2022 against his ex-wife, Angela Solomon, Aaron claimed the allegations were part of a smear campaign recklessly carried out on social media. Do note that Grant was scheduled to testify against his father at the time of his death. And if you were to Google this and you were to find the 911 call, the transcripts, and how cool, calm, and collected Aaron was regarding his son being pinned underneath his own car. First of all, Aaron, why were you there? Grant had his own transportation to get home. Maybe I'm missing something. Just maybe. Now, as promised, let's get into the update on the Idaho murder suspect. And yes, if you've been here for a while, you know I do not give credence and I do not make people infamous nor famous when they commit heinous crimes, or even if they're alleged to have committed heinous crimes. We don't say their names here. We say the names of their victims.
Breaking news, Brian Kohberger's parents have been subpoenaed by a grand jury. The parents of Brian Kohberger have been subpoenaed to testify before a grand jury in Monroe County, Pennsylvania. The attorney representing Brian Kohberger's parents tried to get the subpoena squashed. Kohberger's father is expected to testify before a grand jury in a sealed proceeding in Pennsylvania on Thursday. His mother already testified before the secret panel. Their compiled testimony under oath may be shared with prosecutors in Idaho. Pennsylvania law also allows judges to release transcripts of witness testimony before grand juries to other investigative agencies. The attorneys retained by Brian Kohberger's parents and the Latah County prosecutor have declined to comment. I'll keep you guys updated. What do you think? Drop in the comments.
The fact that this suspect is linked to another person, there's so much overwhelming evidence that has already been made public. We still don't know the other evidence. And now they're bringing the parents in for the grand jury. And his court appearance the other day, where he was just like really quiet, just like I feel like he's guilty. I'm getting the same vibes I got with the Murdaugh trial. Like, you're guilty and you just want to make a spectacle of all of this. Like, you do know, Mr. Idaho suspect, sir, due to legislation that was passed, you cannot profit off of your victims. So doing all of this, maybe you're doing it to make the true crime girlies more money. I don't know. Now, have you all noticed, specifically within the GOP, as they're tossing their hats into the presidential candidacy ring, they keep bringing up Mexican cartels. I talked to you last night about how Ron DeSantis keeps doing this. So many people are doing it. Not so much the Democrats, not so much libertarians, not so much independents, not so much, progressives. Have you wondered why? Because I was wondering why. And then, these lovely nuggets just fell into my lap. And this is very apropos for the United States and their despicable, disgusting history.
Mexico has really strict gun laws. Very strict gun laws. The reason why the cartels have the guns is because of America and their gun laws. As we go through this election cycle, just be aware that all 6 of the Republican presidential candidates now support sending in the U.S. military into Mexico without their permission. That's called an invasion, like what Putin's doing in Ukraine. This has nothing to do with fentanyl and the border, and everything to do with the lithium mine that they found. If you are not aware, Mexico recently found the world's largest lithium deposit, lithium that builds batteries, and the uber-rich billionaire Republican donors wanted control of it, and Mexico nationalized it. They nationalized it. This has nothing to do with the border and everything to do with the lithium. What, you think Republicans would never do that? Iraq has entered the chat. That's it. That's the TikTok. Lithium deposit that was discovered in Mexico is worth $700 billion. Because it's been nationalized, American companies cannot come in and steal it. U.S. corporations who donate tons to Republican Party have been begging them to open it up. And because Mexico was not going to allow them to strong-arm them, undercut them, they turned to the politicians that they bought. Here's The Economist, a very right-leaning magazine, blaming the Green Revolution on Mexico because they can't go in and strip their lands. Here's the CFR coming out against what Mexico nationalizing their own resources. If huge corporations owned by Harlan Crow, the guy who bought our Supreme Court, can't strong-arm our country, they'll use the politicians that they've bought to demonize the country.
Right on par with American history and white people colonization. We won't allow your people to come in. We will destroy your country to the point where the only way that you can plausibly survive is to come to us. And right now we have a presidential candidate, Ron DeSantis, who's like, no, we're going to stop asylum. You can get asylum at one of those countries that you crossed over to get to us that we've already decimated. But the United States will occupy your country, Black, brown, non-white people, and steal your resources to make a profit off of it, then claim they can't pay their bills. Because it won't be the United States government that will be put in charge of that. It'll be the people that they protect with all these, tax breaks and tax havens and tax cuts. You think I'm joking? Google Chiquita Banana. This isn't the first time they've attempted this. It won't be the last time. See, they're saying it's guns and cartels. Sound familiar? They need to go in and save the good people of this country while telling you and instilling into you that you should be able to live the way that you want to live in the greatest country ever. And if you've ever gone through any sales training, if you have to label yourself, your product, your anything, it's not that. You don't give yourself accolades. You don't give your product, your service accolades. Other people do, but I digress. They're going to use that to say that they need to now occupy Mexico. It's already bad enough that they already took a good half of Mexico and turned it into the United States. But the United States loves to turn countries into states. Hawaii, Alaska, Mexico. You hear me? So when people ask you what white culture is, thievery, revisionism, lies, bullshit. And then they will still scream that Mexicans are poor and underprivileged and all these things, but they can't come here. And for the Mexicans out there that have internalized racism, if it don't apply, let it fly. I was very specific in what I said. For Mexicans who hold internalized racism, when you were on the bandwagon saying that we Black people are lazy because all of a sudden a whole country and then some denoted us as lazy when our labor no longer was free. Look at Florida right now. And look how now they're saying the same things about you that they've been saying about us. Their handbook doesn't change, just the target of their wrath. Because when mediocrity no longer makes them successful, they feel attacked. And since y'all refuse to learn unrevisioned, unredacted, unwhitewashed history, you are condemned, and this comment says it all, to a Groundhog's Day of history, because if you don't learn it, you don't know what to not do. Because you will never learn, nor will you get the map as to where you are going if you never knew where you've been. And for you Christian nationalists, you know how long they journeyed. That journey took far longer than what it was supposed to. Because what? A hard head makes a lost soul. But you all, I would be remiss if I did not make you aware of a brand new children's book. This is heartbreaking, but it is also necessary.
This is a brand new children's book. Quote, if there is danger and it is safe to get away, we should run like rabbit instead of stay. If danger is near, do not fear. Hide like Pooh does until police appear. If we can't get away, we have to fight with all our might. Parents in the Dallas Independent School District in Texas found out this week that their kids as young as pre-K, were sent home with this book. It is called Stay Safe, and it uses characters from Winnie the Pooh to teach run, hide, fight, which is the guidance in the event of an active shooter. It teaches that to young children. We talked to the publisher of this book today, and he told us he was thinking of the school shooting in Uvalde, Texas last year that killed 19 fourth grade students and 2 teachers. The book's publisher said he just wanted to make a resource for parents who found themselves not knowing how to have this kind of conversation with children that young. And he told us that he is, quote, heartbroken that we as a society have a need for something like this.
We are living in the movie Idiocracy if it married the Wild West. And this is the time that I need white people to understand why we non-white people keep saying white supremacy hurts everyone, because you all are willing to sacrifice your own family and friends and your own livelihood to protect guns, to protect racists, to protect homophobes, transphobes, etc. Employees of Target right now are receiving death threats because people have gone into Target and misrepresented the clothing that is available and who it's available for, where the clothing is put for the upcoming Pride Month, as if this has not been going on for, I believe, 8 years now with Target. It has become so normalized that if you don't like something instead of days gone past where you just walk past it, you invoke violence on other people, even if those other people look like you. You make the rest of us a monolith according to the community or communities that we are a part of. But you individualize yourselves so much that you do not care if you eradicate your own. Hmm. You talk down to and about and denigrate other countries. The United States is ghetto as shit. There is nothing great about this country. You are revitalizing a period of time that for so long you took pride in saying how your great-grandfather, your grandfather, your mothers, etc. fought against fascism. But now you are wholeheartedly either embracing it or excusing it. We're living in a time where it's apparent that certain things went on because you excuse it. So stop with the, well, my family didn't own slaves, but you excused it just like you're excusing it now. Under the guise of, well, that's just the status quo. That's just how things are. Well, you know, they said that they are. And you don't even see. You've gone from running into the point to living in the center of the point. Now, before we go into this last story, as always, I want you to make sure that you check out the links in the description of this video. Also, whatever you take away, please, even if you don't share the entire episode, write down the minute count and have people watch from this moment. Because this young man and this family deserves better. And this is a blazing example of how ingrained racism is. And even though white people are very individualistic and white supremacists are very individualistic, they will come out to protect their own and make excuses because they are afraid they will be the next one caught in 4K, and they need people to rally behind them as well. And also in the description of this video is a GoFundMe that is very important. So even if you cannot donate, please share that GoFundMe. Let's protect this Black child. I'll see you in 2 and 2.
All right, y'all, I'm back with my update about this story, which went live earlier today. Unfortunately, I had a doctor's appointment, so I couldn't hop right on video to tell you guys this. So let's get into it. I spoke with the teenager in the video, the one who refused to give Sarah Jane Comrie his bike. I also spoke with his mother and his older sister. As some of you are aware, his older sister actually put out a video yesterday in defense of her brother. And the reason that they did that, the entire family was very frustrated that there were all these narratives out there about him, but not one media outlet sought him out or tried to find him or even thought to try to get his side of the story. Everyone just automatically believed Sarah Jane Comrie. So they wanted to make sure that his voice was heard. And so I had a conversation with him as well as his family. And what I learned is this young man, who is only 17 years old, he is a few weeks away from graduating from high school, and he's looking forward to going to college. He's a frequent city bike rider. And he had that bike. He had picked it up in the Bronx. And he and his friends, all from immigrant West African families, They all rode those bikes from the Bronx first to Harlem, where they stopped. And he explained to me that they ride the bikes and they stop them before they hit the 45-minute mark and redock them. And the reason why is because Citi Bike begins to charge you more if you ride a bike for over 45 minutes. So in order to escape that surcharge, what the boys do when they ride the bikes is they ride them, and before it hits 45 minutes, they redock them so that it can reset the timer, and then they take them back out again and continue on their trip. So they did this that day. He provided receipts. The receipts are in my story. When they went to Harlem, and then after they, re-rented the bikes and kept going, they ended up on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, near Bellevue Hospital. They first stopped and got some frozen yogurt. Then they went to that docking station where Sarah Jane Comrie found them. And when she found them, they were all there resting. They had redocked their bikes to reset the timers, and they were there resting. 4 of the boys were sitting on their bikes. The one teen in the video who wouldn't give up his bike was standing next to his with his hands on the handlebars. Sarah Jane Comrie came up. She asked one boy if she could take his bike. He politely declined, explained to her that they were going to be leaving soon and using the bikes again. She asked another boy in the group if she could take his bike. He told her the same thing. Then she saw our boy, who I interviewed. She walked up to him and asked him if she could take his bike. He said no. She then told him, "Oh, I'm pregnant. Can you help out a pregnant lady?" And he again told her no, that he needed the bike, that he had been on the bike and ridden it all the way from the Bronx, and he needed the bike to get back home. And this is where things get crazy. Part 2. All right, so as I stated, she asked 2 of his friends first. Then she walked up to our boy, who, for the purposes of this story, we are calling him the pseudonym Michael, and that's to protect his identity. So she went up to Michael. She saw he was just standing next to his bike. She asked him if she could take his bike. He politely said no. Then she asked him, she said, "Hey, I'm pregnant. Can you help a pregnant lady out?" And he told her, "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but I rode this bike all the way from the Bronx. I need this bike to get all the way back home, so I'm still using it." And she then took her phone out. She leaned over. He was, again, standing with his hands on the handlebars holding the bike. He just wasn't on the bike. She leaned over to him because, as it's been explained to me on the Citi Bikes, the QR code that you have to scan is like between the handlebars and the seat. So she had to lean into his personal space to scan it, which she did. And then she proceeded to commandeer the bike. And that is when they started saying, record her, which is when we come in on the video. So they got to that station at 7:19 p.m. She walks up somewhere between then and 7:24. She scans the bike at 7:24 and proceeds to try to take it. So now they're all arguing and telling her, "It's not your bike, it's not your bike." She's refusing to let it go. And that's when she starts the screaming for help, as if they're attacking her. As if they were attacking her. She walked up to this group of boys. She asked them if she could take their bikes. They politely told her no. And instead of accepting their no, she decided she was going to take the bike anyway. Let that sink in. So she's screaming, yelling for help, making a scene on the street. They're pushing back and forth with the bike. The bike gets redocked. When the bike gets redocked, he notices it. So he takes his phone and he punches in the number of the bike, which is the number that we've all seen on the receipts. When he does that and she notices that he did that and he got the bike out back on his account, that is when she snatched his phone from him. Keep in mind, this is a grown woman in her 30s and a 17-year-old teenage boy. And this was her behavior. It's a lot. Her attorney put out a narrative that painted those boys as criminals. He made it seem as if those boys took the bike from her by force out of nowhere, because the way he described it, she walked up to a bike rack that had bikes in it. She grabbed a bike that no one was standing near. That's what her attorney said. No individuals were near it. And she got on the bike. And then as she decided to roll the bike out, that's when they rushed her and pushed her back in and told her they were taking the bike. Part 3. So the boy and his family are very upset by all of this. They're upset about the narratives that they're seeing in the media, the narrative that was very directly put into the media by her attorney, which paints him as a criminal. The lawyer's statement basically says that they rushed this woman, physically pushed her and the bike back into the dock so that they could take it. And we know now that that's not what happened. That boy had that bike all day long. So the mother basically feels like, no one was supporting their family. The boy feels the same way, and so does the sister. The sister told me that she reached out to a prominent civil rights attorney who's pretty big on social media. That attorney had tweeted out about the video, so she thought maybe that person might be able to help her. She reached out to the attorney and asked them, hey, can you help me? I'm the sister of the boy in the video you tweeted, blah, blah, blah. We need help. Our family, no one is supporting us. We don't know what to do. And that attorney told her, thanks for reaching out. Unfortunately, my law firm doesn't practice this kind of law. Reach out to the state bar in New York, and they can maybe refer you to some other resources like legal aid. Needless to say, a GoFundMe has been started for the family to help them out through this terrible time. The mom told me, she said that she works so hard, she works 7 days a week, and she still can't afford to feed her children. So they get EBT. That boy gets an EBT discount on the Citi Bikes, which is why he uses them so much. He said he uses Citi Bike because it's cheaper than taking the subway. He's an avid Citi Bike rider. He's in the Citi Bike Angels program. He gets a lot of rewards because he rides the bike so much and he knows the system so well. So this is the GoFundMe. You can see it in the picture. It's been set up by another journalist to help. The beneficiary is the boy's sister. The money is going directly to the family and no one else. Please support it. Please promote it. Please give to it. Please help this family out. They've gotten the short end of the stick in all of this because, again, as they honestly said, no one ever reached out and got that boy's story until I did. So thank you for listening. Please read my article. It's on News One. Please give to the GoFundMe. I appreciate you guys for giving me your time and for listening. And also to all of you trolls out there, stay mad, bitch.
And as I stated, the article and the GoFundMe are linked in the description of this video. But I also wanted to share something that I found on Twitter. Someone screenshotted a text message that they got from Citi Bike. Now, this is before things were extended to 45 minutes, so keep that in mind. But pay close attention to what it says. Welcome to Citi Bike. Your pass includes unlimited number of rides up to 30 minutes per ride. Rides less than 30 minutes rides greater than 30 minutes incur extra fees. To end ride, dock bike and wait for green light. You docked bike number 02141. To ride again, insert the same credit card at any kiosk to get a new 5-digit code. Now, in doing a little research into Citi Bike, you can dock for a certain amount of time and they'll give you a code so nobody else can take your bike. So, yeah. Now, for the final story tonight, I do have to put the trigger warning back up. Stop asking non-white people why they have a fear of the police, regardless of what that police officer looks like. Because a child called the police to try to save his mother from an abusive relationship, and he ended up in the hospital. The police have not apologized, and they released the man who was abusing the mother because she didn't fill out the proper paperwork because she was at the hospital trying to ensure that her child was going to survive. But take a look.
Right now, there are rapidly growing calls for the firing of a police officer in Indianola, Mississippi, after he allegedly shot an unarmed 11-year-old boy on Saturday. Darian Murray, who is black, had called 911 to report a domestic disturbance. His family's attorney says he was trying to protect his mother. The Washington Post reports that Murray followed the police officer's commands and had his hands up, but was still shot in the chest. Officials in Indianola have voted to place the police officer on paid administrative leave while the case is investigated by the state. NBC's Steve Patterson is following this for us. Also with me is retired NYPD Detective Mark Claxton. So, Steve, what more do we know about how this young boy is doing and where this investigation stands?
Yeah, Chris, according to the family, after Adarian rounded that corner, met the police officer, he was shot one time in the chest, where he collapsed to the ground. Apparently, after being shot, he was screaming, "What did I do wrong? Why was I shot?" According to medical officials, he suffered a collapsed lung, a lacerated liver, several broken ribs, was rushed to the hospital where he was then put on a ventilator. But the silver lining in all of this, in this terrible story, is that he apparently has been soldiering through treatments at the hospital, and just a day ago was treated at the hospital and released back to the custody of his family. He's doing okay. The mother spoke about what kind of blessing this was that her family got through this. Listen to this.
He's blessed. I don't know how else to describe it, how he survived. That's the only thing I can say, that he was blessed. He have a lot of questions. He asked me in the hospital, like, why they shot him. He was in good spirit, but every now and then I look over at him and he'll just cry.
He has a lot of questions. The family has a lot of questions, including the family attorney. The Mississippi Bureau of Investigation says they have a full-throated investigation with that officer on administrative leave. And the family attorney saying that there is not only police body cam video, but also unreleased gas station security cam video that has not been shown to the public yet. Chris.
If this does not confirm for you that they never see us as children, I don't know what will. How do you confuse that 11-year-old baby with a grown-ass man that's abusing someone, assaulting someone, and you give him, come on out, baby, come on out. You can, and then you shoot that baby. You tell you know that you're talking to a child and tell him to come out, and once again, make sure you check out the links in the description of this video. Please share this broadcast. And as always, each one teach one, each one reach one. Till tomorrow.